what we're going to do is look at, having had a look at policy and what we mean by policy, having talked a little bit about economic globalization and political globalization, what we're going to do is spend a little bit of time looking at some of the other forms of globalization. And thank you to everybody who's sent me sort of outlines and drafts of your assignments. And that if you sent it to me and you're still waiting feedback, I will do it today. I'm just sort of working through all the emails, but you're certainly on the right sort of track with your assignments. So let's.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Professor Lambert, like regarding the assignment, like what if the student is not in a company related to education? What would we do?
That's going to be interesting because when everybody should be working in a field of education, because that's one of the prerequisites of the course. So if you're not, then the assignment will still need to be applied to education based on your own experiences. Okay. So
Okay.
email me separately and we'll have a chat to find a way of sort of based on what your current job is or where you work, how we can ensure that you meet the requirements of the assignment. Okay.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
So let's have a little look at demographic globalization, because obviously this is quite an important area. What we find is that, let's just go back to that previous one. We are getting an increasingly aging population. Okay. So people are living longer, and they're living longer because in part, let me just mute your microphones a minute because I can hear somebody in the background. So people are living longer in part because healthcare is getting better. People are living more healthy lifestyles. So the average age of the population is increasing. At the same time, fewer children are being born. And so what we end up with is more people living longer, fewer children being born and entering sort of the labour market and starting to work. So that means that actually globally there's less tax, there's less money being paid, less tax being paid to support the education system. If you add into that migration and immigration and the movement of people, then we can see actually that demographic globalization becomes a really interesting topic to explore. So what we find is that the average age is increasing. So we can see that, right, what have we got? Countries with the oldest population: Japan, Finland, Italy. So they generally have the oldest population. We've got countries where the population is aging quickly, so there's becoming more and more of them. And these are OECD countries, and then sort of other countries who are not part of the OECD. And again, the general line is increasing. So this is where we were in the 80s. This is where we are 2020 and projected population sort of aging and percentage of people working. But what's really interesting is that what we see is the split of working groups. So this is projected figures. Obviously, we're around here at the moment. What we can see is that those who are over 80 increase. So population is likely to peak in about 2030. After that, the population goes into decline globally. But even though it's declining, the proportion of those age 80 and above gets bigger. The proportion of this is 65 to 79 gets bigger. The proportion of those aged 20 to 64 starts to decline, and there's a slight decline before it picks up again on those aged 0 to 19. So what we're seeing is that overall population is declining, but those aged 65 and above the proportion is increasing compared to those aged 20 to 64. So this is our working population generally. And when I get to 65, maybe 68, I could think about retiring if I wanted to. So actually, we've got fewer people down here who are working, and they're going to have to pay more taxes to support the increased number who are not working. So we're then reliant on the government to support us. Now, governments can do one of three things. They can say, right, we can provide support for everybody, universal support. So you don't have to pay for anything. And that's great. Everything is free at the point of access. It's paid for through the taxes that we pay. But with more and more people not working and fewer people paying taxes, that we get to a point where that's no longer affordable. So we have to say, okay, unfortunately, we can't pay for everybody. So we'll pay for what we can, and those who can afford to pay for things, well, you're going to have to pay. So if you can afford to pay for your healthcare, then you will, rather than everybody gets free healthcare. And we see this particularly in Western countries. When somebody gets very old and cannot live in their house or their apartment on their own, rather than family members looking after them, they put them into communal living places, care homes, where they're looked after by nurses. And that used to be free for everybody. So you get to maybe 70 or 80, and you would then go into this nursing home. You'd be looked after by nurses. What we've seen over the past 20 years is that the governments can't afford to do that. So they now say that if you've got money, if you've got savings, if you own your own house, you have to sell that to pay for your nursing, your nursing care. If you can't afford to do that, if you don't own your own property, if you've got no money, then the state will pay for it, but they will tell you where you're going to be located. So that means you may be miles away from any family that you've got. The other alternative is that everybody pays unless you literally have nothing. And that's what we call residual. So we can either have a universal service where everything is paid for by the state, an affordable service where the state will pay for certain things but not others, or a residual service where the state pays for nothing unless it absolutely has to. And that's, again, the options that governments have. And this is becoming more of an issue because the more people who get older, the less money that the government has through taxes, so the less they can pay for. So there is a direct relationship between the population, the demographics of the population, and the ability for the state to pay to look after people. And it's quite unusual because this is one of the countries, certainly the UK is one of the countries where family, particularly when they get old, don't necessarily live with relatives. In a lot of countries, elderly relatives will live with children or other family members, but in this country, they don't. So you've probably got more up-to-date data than this, but I haven't. But what we do know is that the population in China has increased, and nearly 11% of it is over the age of 60. These are published statistics, so whether they're accurate or not, and if you've got more up-to-date data, then please send it through and I can update this slide. The projection is by 2051 that 30% of the population will be aged over 60. And that's a lot of people. So the United Nations forecasts that China will have the world's largest elderly population by then. But in the second half of the century, so from 2050 through to 2100, that's going to be overtaken by India, which will have then the largest population of over 60s. So like I say, I would like to know, and if you've got any data, then please send it through because, like I say, this was 2006. I'm struggling to find more recent data than this, but you might have more up-to-date data. So what does that mean? We know that at the moment, the global population is still increasing. But what's interesting is the changes in some of those global populations. So we've got China, India, and the US. But then going forward, they're projecting, and these are obviously projected figures, that India will have the largest population of over 60s, then China, and then Nigeria. Now, this isn't population generally, this is population percentage of over 60s. So while Nigeria, in terms of number of people, is not the same size as China or India, the percentage of over 60s in Nigeria compared to under 60s will make it the third largest. And again, that's really important because how do certainly smaller countries, how do they reconcile this? How are they going to support um, their their population, their own people, when you're not the biggest country in the world, you don't have the most resources, but you have more and more people who are aging, they are living longer. So what does this mean for education? So education can be paid for either as private education. So if you can afford to send your children to a private school where you pay fees each month, then that's absolutely fine. But if you are in state education, where education is paid for by the government, if there's less money because there's less tax being paid because there's fewer people working, then there's going to be less money for education. That means that potentially we're going to have larger classes because I still need to educate all these people, but I have less money to pay for it. So I maybe have less teachers available. So, and because I don't have that money coming in to the school, I'm going to have to think about, well, what can I spend my money on as a school? What is the most important thing? Well, I need to pay the teachers, but do I need to have all, certain resources? Do I need to pay for certain educational visits for children, for students? What can I stop doing as part of my, because I've got limited amount of money? The other challenge I've got is that some subjects don't attract huge numbers of students. So certain subjects everybody does and they need to do maths, science, things like that. But then there are certain subjects that are sometimes seen as less important, and not all students would choose those subjects. So you suddenly find that some teachers, while they've trained to teach one subject, may be asked to teach another subject. And we see that quite a bit, certainly in Western countries. So, for example, the science teachers can all teach the three sciences: chemistry, physics, and biology. That's fine. However, the art teacher may have to teach another subject. If there isn't sufficient students taking art, then if that teacher wants to continue teaching full time, they might find that 2/3 of their time they're spent teaching art, but the other 1/3 of their time they might be teaching another subject. And this is quite common, certainly in the West anyway. The problem with this is, while it keeps the teacher employed and it allows students to continue to study art, for those students who are being taught maybe maths by the art teacher, are they getting the same high quality experience as they would be if they were being taught by a maths specialist? Now, the art teacher wouldn't teach the higher level maths. They would teach it in the lower school, so to the slightly younger children. They wouldn't teach the 16, 17, 18-year-olds maths, but they they might teach 9, 10, 11-year-olds. some of the maths. So from that perspective, does this start to dilute the quality of the teaching that students get if they are being taught by a non-specialist teacher? It works the other way. If I was to try and teach art, then it would be a complete disaster. So that art students wouldn't have a very good experience if I was teaching them art. The other thing it creates is this idea of competition between schools. Because if I want, the only way as a state school for me to survive is to have students. And for every student that I have, the government gives me a certain amount of money. So if I want to survive, I need to have more students and I get more money. So that means I'm going to be competing with other schools, with neighbouring schools, in order to try and recruit as many students as I can. Because that means the more students I have, the more funding I will get, the more things I will be able to do. Also, if I've got fewer students, if I've got sort of an aging population, am I going to require staff to continue to teach for longer in terms of the number of years? Am I going to have 70-year-olds teaching me? And if I was a 14, 15, 16-year-old student, how would I feel about that? Now, I saw a hand, it popped up on my screen to say somebody put their hand up, but it's gone again. So I don't know if somebody had a question. I don't know
Uh,
who it was.
Professor Lambert, yes, I have a question. Well, it might sound a little bit stupid, but well, anyway. So, well, we are talking about like the globalization demographic
Yeah,
globalization. So I thought we are talking about immigrations, things like, well, like labor in China would move to like to Germany, to the UK for work rather
we're
than
gonna
just
we're
oh,
gonna come
continue.
on to that. Yeah, we're gonna come
Oh,
on to sort of migration because that plays into the whole demographics. Because if I've got, and I'll just pick up on your point, if I've got um lots of population movements, if I've got lots of people coming into a country or leaving a country, that's going to have a real impact on education. For the simple reason, if I've got lots of people leaving a country, they're migrating or emigrating, um, then I've got fewer people. I'm losing that knowledge. We hear the term brain drain, where we've got lots of people leaving a country. And as a country, we then don't have the skills we need to be able to teach students in order to maintain our own sort of economy.
yes.
Likewise, if we've got a lot of people coming into the country, that's going to have an impact on my education again, because I've got a much more diverse population that I not only need to teach, but maybe need to become accustomed to not only the education system, but the culture of the country as well. So it starts to impact on what I can and cannot do as an education system.
Yeah. Yes, I agree. But I don't think I can relate it to the current situation in China. What I can think of about this kind of situation is like after World War II, Germany
Hmm.
has well introduced a lot of laborers from Turkey because German has died a lot of soldiers. They don't have
Yeah,
labor, so they had to introduce those laborers, Turkish people to Germany.
yeah,
But because those people couldn't speak German, so like there was a huge burden on the like German training schools, like those kind of
yeah,
system.
yeah, absolutely. Because they needed to be able to get workers into Germany who could speak the language, and they couldn't speak the language. So suddenly the education system became overwhelmed with having to teach German to overseas workers. It's the same in other countries as well, where where there is a shortage of skilled, and not actually skilled, where there is a shortage of labor in other countries, we often look to overseas to recruit them. Yet you then have the issue that if I am recruiting from overseas, how do I ensure that they have not only the language skills that are needed, but they are of the standard that I want them to be before I employ them, basically. And that
I
becomes how does that work in China then?
well, I mean, currently I think we still have enough labor at work.
Mm,
But we do recruit like foreign expert professors to
yeah,
teach, like in those colleges, universities.
yeah,
So, but China has a very restrict like the green card policy.
yeah,
So a
yeah,
lot of those foreign teachers they came, they worked for several years and left. So
yeah.
and the population of this group, I assume is not very big, so it doesn't affect much on our education policy.
Mm. I think you're probably in quite a lucky situation, um, because I know in the UK we've struggled to recruit teachers in certain subjects. So, for example, we struggle to recruit maths teachers. So we will look um, overseas to recruit maths teachers. The problem we can recruit maths teachers overseas, and they are very good mathematicians. The challenge is that a lot of them will struggle to work within the UK education system because students within the UK schools have a different have a different understanding of what education is for, and so do parents. So there are huge cultural challenges because education in this country isn't valued in the same way that maybe education is in China or in some of the Nordic countries, Norway, Finland, Sweden, or in a lot of countries where what the teacher says, you don't question and you sit
Yeah,
there and you behave. Whereas in this country, teaching a group of children in sort of a high school, maybe 13, 14, 15 year olds, and there's 30 of them in a class, it's like crowd control. Um, Sometimes the aim of the lesson is just to keep them quiet and sat down, um, rather than actually teaching. Now, I used to teach in a school and I used to teach sort of engineering subjects. We call it technology in this country. And we would be in a workshop where you've got all this machinery and teaching sort of 14-year-olds where you got 30 of them in the workshop with machinery was hard work because they'd want to be touching and fiddling with things with sort of machinery that maybe they shouldn't be touching. So we often will recruit from overseas, but it's whether those teachers not so much have the subject knowledge, it's whether they have the whether they can cope with the cultural awareness. So what we end up is asking former teachers, ex-teachers who've taught in the UK for many years, and we say to them, would you mind coming back part-time and continuing to teach for us? So this is where you then get people in their 70s still teaching because of sometimes the population movement or sometimes the lack of population movement. I wouldn't want any of you to teach in a British school. It wouldn't be fair on you because the students, the children will be so completely different. That's not to say you couldn't, because subject-wise, you all know your subjects, and just it's how the systems are so different in terms of attitudes towards the students, towards teachers from students. So population movement and immigration does become a really significant issue because actually the focus of education then has to shift slightly. And in this country, we get children coming in school who, and it'd be the same in all countries where there is movement, population movement, who maybe cannot speak the language and need to very quickly learn the language so that they can start to understand what is going on. It's not just rich countries that are affected by this, but poor countries as well. We often find in poorer countries, we have a lot of sort of people leaving the country because they look to go to other countries for work and to settle down because they feel that they will have a better life if they move to another country. And exactly the same things happen if we lose a lot of people from a country, particularly working age people, we get fewer, we have smaller taxes, we have less taxes because there's fewer people working. So we end up with larger class sizes. So suddenly we got classes of 40 or maybe 50 students because we've got the same amount to do. We still got to teach the same subjects, but we have less money because we have fewer people paying taxes because people are leaving that country. So the issues work not only it's the same issues for rich countries as it is for poorer countries. It's the similar sort of issues if we got lots of people coming into a country from overseas, lots of people leaving a country. The impact is still felt on education. The challenge is whether those coming into a country can assimilate into the country, and that's where we touch on sort of the cultural globalization. And these become really big challenges for individuals, for countries and for individuals. We see
But
this. Go on.
uh, but I also see another trend, like, well, so if you go through the American university, you will see like many of their professors or assistant or associate professors are actually Chinese. Like those people, they studied in America and then they just, well, demographic globalization, they just went
Yeah,
there and just decided to work there, and then they just fit in the system perfect.
Is that because they went over there and studied and in part gained their education from America? Is
Yes,
that
I
why they
would.
fit in?
Yes, I think so, because like if you check the resume, you will see
Mhm.
like they usually graduated from that university and then they would just choose to stay there,
Yeah,
like as a faculty or a staff.
yeah, absolutely. And it's no different here. Our next door neighbors are Chinese. Their sons have grown up, but their sons grew up in this country. They were educated in this country. They now work in finance in this country. Um, and I think that's slightly different if you're coming over to for your education and then staying here. If you were, I wonder though, if one of those professors had done their education in China or their home country, started teaching or researching at the university, say in China, and then decided to come to another country, whether they would be able to fit in the same way, or does this depend on which phase of education they're working in? Is it easier to integrate if you're working in a university overseas? Because generally you will have a wider range of individuals than if you are working in a high school or a primary school or kindergarten within another country. What do you think?
Yeah, that's a fair concern. So for me, I think for no matter whether you are a teacher in high school or in a college, as long as you have studied in American education system before, such as
Mm,
you went to America for MA or BA, if you've been there and you've experienced to that kind of education system, so if you want to, well, go to America to study, they would just fit in well because
yeah,
they were exposed to that kind of system and they know how the system would work.
yeah,
So,
absolutely, yeah,
so I would say it is more related to their education background, their experience background. So, yeah.
yeah. No, and I would agree with you that having that experience in that education system is a benefit. Um, I think Gwen, did your name just pop up with your hand?
Yes, Steve. Uh, Actually, what she's saying is right because we have you can get someone who studied maybe in a British school.
Yeah.
A professor or a teacher from a British school cannot go to teach maybe in an Indian school because I
No.
think it depends now on the system of education where you studied and what you obtained.
Mm. So
Yeah.
does this, and I agree with you, Gwen, does this mean that actually as we're becoming more globalized in the world, are we going back to a system where actually education is becoming almost less globalized from a demographic perspective? So we're learning about more and more of the world, and we're being taught how to live in this globalized world, but I can't go and teach in India or I can't go and teach in China because I've not experienced that education system and I'm going to struggle. I'm not going to be able to do this. I'm just going to have to teach it from a British perspective. Is that where we're heading with this? Because that almost seems
That's
quite. Go on.
that's a very good point. So, I think, well, in my experience, I saw a lot of like universities, they are like chasing after the American system. So, well, UK, because, well, you guys are the, well, stream of this kind of like mainstream of this kind of globalization. So we would say, well, UK system is doing better. Well, American system is doing better. We should follow their steps. So sometimes we would just well abandon what we have just to follow you guys. This is kind of like not that diversity, but
Mm,
we are working towards a unification.
okay. Now I'm interested. How are we unifying? Is this about us all sort of rather than following what somebody else is doing, trying to just adapt what we're doing to make it more unified, but within our own system?
Well, how do I put it? So like first of all, like in Chinese system, we do, as you said before, the teacher would want you to behave.
Mm,
Like, well, I just want you to sit to listen. So right now we figure that was not right. We should like focus on our students. So, but
mhm.
where we can learn from this, we don't know how to focus on our students. So we can learn from the British education system. So when we learn, sometimes we copy.
Yeah,
So I mean, when copy happens, it's kind of like we are just unified ourselves to follow your steps. We do
yeah,
not produce something new, something like really, well, you know, fit for the real Chinese education.
yeah. No, I know what you mean, and it's really interesting. I do enjoy sort of these discussions because actually, I don't think we sh I think what we should be doing, I think every education system has some really good points and some areas that maybe are not quite as good. And what we should be doing is learning from those good points and seeing how we can improve the areas which aren't so good. And I'll give you an example. I was this was going back a number of years. Um, I was in Germany, and in Germany they have the country's almost split into four parts, and each of those parts has a slightly different education system. So if I moved from one part of the country to another part, the education systems would be slightly different. What I was taught would be slightly different. And there's there's an element there of saying actually that needs to be more consistent. So if I move to any part of Germany, there are certain things which are going to be taught. However, the way they deliver their technical education in the colleges is really, really good. So actually, I want to be able to take that really good bit and say, okay, it's not necessarily going to work in my setting because my students are going to be completely different. However, what principles do they use which I can implement to make my technical training better than it is? And I think it's not copying and just following what others are doing. It's being critical and saying, hey, you know what? We could take some of these really, really good bits, adapt them, and implement them in my own education system to make sure that my education system becomes really, really good as well. And I think that would be an interesting thing to do. But I think at the moment we go off and we look at other countries, and the UK is just as guilty of this, and say, and I'll give you an example where we've done this as a country. Our maths teaching isn't as good as it is in the Far East. So somebody went off and had a look at what happens in Singapore, and we now have a math system called the Singapore math system because they looked at the results of children in Singapore and said, hey, they're doing really well in maths. Let's just copy exactly what they're doing. And when they implemented it here, they didn't get the same level of results that they were expecting. And this was because they simply went off and copied and tried to implement what they were doing in British schools. And what they found is that the attitudes towards maths between the two different sets of students in the two countries was very different. The approach to teaching maths in the two countries was very different. So it's never going to work if you just take something from over here and implement it over here in a different country. You're not going to get the same results. So I think as we live in this globalized world, maybe we should be looking to other countries to see how they do things, but then implement it in a way that is going to work in our own setting, in our own country, in our own schools and colleges and universities. And that brings us on nicely to cultural globalization. And we'll do cultural globalization, and then there's some activities which I want you to do in readiness for the next session. Cultural globalization, I know a number of you are going to write about this in your assignments, and I really look forward to reading your assignments on this. The question is, how would you define culture, and what does culture mean to you? And this is what I want you to do, and I'm going to put on Moodle a couple of questions into a chat forum on Moodle, and I'll send you the link out, because what I want you to do is look at if somebody said to you, what's this culture thing that you keep talking about? What is culture? How would you explain culture to them? And what does it mean to you? And that's really, because once you understand that, we can start to think about this from a globalization perspective. Some people look at culture from these different perspectives: ethnicity, socio-economic class, whether you're upper class, working class, maybe around history in terms of your sort of family history, if you like. Your education, some people look at culture through education, through age. You will hear older people say, oh, when I was young, it was never done like this. You'll hear your parents or grandparents say that. You may even say that to your children. It may be around language. Culture may be around language, particularly where you have dialects. You have different people sound different in different parts of the country. Culture may be around religion or spiritual beliefs, around sexual orientation, around upbringing, life experiences, geographical location, or gender. We have culture which is based on gender, a male culture or female culture. So when we do the next session on leadership theory, we will look at how culture works within an organization. But here we are very much thinking of culture from a human perspective. And you will have culture from from a sort of country perspective, from a state perspective. And we've alluded this. One of the things that we try and do is change culture. In this country, one of the things we're going to have a look at sort of some other ideas of culture in a minute as well, is we try and change culture and change behaviors and change the way we do things. But sometimes they are rooted in practice. We've always done it this way. We will hear people at work say they expect us to be in the office. Why? Because we've always had an office and we've always done it this way. But as globalization sort of moves forward, as advances in technology move forward, do we need to continue working in the same way? Do I still need to go into the office every day to work? Am I any more efficient or any less efficient in that way? So what we find is we try and force people to change their behaviors, change their culture. So we remove people's offices, say, right, you don't have an office anymore. We're just going to have a big open plan office with 50 desks in, and you'll go in the morning, you'll find a desk, you'll work, and then when you leave, you clear all your things away, and somebody else will sit at that desk. And that's a way we try and force people to change their behaviors, because what we're doing is forcing them to change their work practices. But this idea of culture, we see it through work. This idea that we don't have a fixed location from where we work. The culture of going to a single organization and working is changing. We have this cultural approach which is emerging where we would change the number of staff we have to fit the demands of the organization, the hours that people work. Not everybody is full-time now. We will have a mix of people who are full-time, who are part-time, and who are hourly paid. And the amount people get paid will vary because, again, this is about flexibility and a culture, a shift in culture. No longer do we have this idea of a job for life. If you talk to parents and grandparents and great grandparents, they would spend 50 years working for the same company. But that's changing. We move from organization to organization. It might still be within the same sort of area of work. We might still be involved in education, but we won't spend 50 years working for the same school. We will move between schools. We will progress in our career into more senior roles. And the type of work will vary, as will the location. And this is all brought about in part by cultural globalization, as well as demographic globalization, as well as technological globalization. These things are all create a different culture in terms of how we work. But actually, let me just go on the slide. Just want to go back. Gone back too far. So we'll carry on with the work culture bit, because the other aspect of culture is around cultural practices. So the cultures in terms of the behaviors, the things that we do because they are rooted in history, are also key to what we do. So the fact that there are certain historic traditions that you will participate in, or the country participates in, make up the culture of that country. So we have culture, which is now almost in two parts. We have culture at a state level, and then we have culture at an organizational level. And then we have individual cultures and things that we do, which are just part of our who we are, maybe because of our family. So we have this hierarchy of culture. So, for example, in this country, at 11 o'clock on the 11th of May every year, we stop for 2 minutes to remember those who died in the First World War. That's something that we do every year. It's part of the culture of this country. There are other cultures which almost then become stereotypes. And you will be aware of some of these cultures, that the English drink an awful lot and they're always violent at football matches. These are cultural stereotypes that are well known globally. And every country has those cultures. You will have your cultural stereotypes and your cultural practices, things that you will do, that you will celebrate, and they are known about sort of globally. And anybody coming into the country as a migrant, as an immigrant, as a worker, has to adjust to those cultural practices. And actually, so we have the cultural practices at a global level. But what I'm interested in is cultural globalization a good thing? Is it a good thing?
What's your question? I'm sorry.
Is cultural globalization a good thing? Is it good that we have such diverse countries and populations now?
Yes, I believe so. I think
Why?
well, that will be so boring if everyone share the same culture. Like, for example, UK. Well, UK has oh well, that's a stereotype, but I've heard UK's food is only uh chips, French fries, and fish pie. But sorry. So
That's
it
that's that you were right with the chips. Is steak and kidney pie. But you're absolutely right. That's a cultural stereotype. But actually, it's yeah, that's what people think of the UK. It rains a lot. We've all got an umbrella, and we all play golf, which is
yeah.
not true. Those are just cultural stereotypes. But actually, they're important because actually that's what people think of the British, and we can poke a little bit of fun about that as well. What do others think?
Yeah, it's a good thing because you tend to learn from each other. Like, for example, you come to this country, like maybe you thinking maybe your own country is this. Like, let's take the weather, for example. Like where I came from is a typical hot place, very hot. If
Yeah,
I'm using a word example. So I like when I was there, I haven't come here. The UK, like, overseas is better like this. I'm talking about the weather now.
yeah.
But coming here, this weather is not like the weather is damn cold. And I'm start missing like start missing my place where I came from that my weather was like okay. But it's good that I came here to experience it. I cannot say I
Yeah,
cannot like 10 people back home that it like it's not like that. The weather here is different. For example, you see that before you get to 4 o'clock here, everywhere is already dark.
yeah. And
But
this is
7
it.
o'clock where I came from, it's still very bright.
Yeah.
I mean
And in
7
this, This is it. In the
We-
summer, 7 o'clock is still bright here, but from October through to March, 4 o'clock and it's dark. Yeah.
you see the food, we have to learn the food, how to eat the food, how to communicate, even if you know English is not the same.
Yeah.
How to relate, how to speak. Maybe you can be speaking carelessly where you came from is not the same here.
Yeah.
Like how to walk, like practically everything we tend to learn it. So it's a way of life. It's a way of life, like learning from each other, giving ideas, communication wise and everything. It's okay. I think it's okay.
Yeah. Absolutely. I had sort of a friend, and he was from the Middle East, and he came over to the UK to work, and he was so happy when it rained, and he was like, "Oh, I love it. It's wet, it's damp, it's cold," and I'm like, "What are you on about?" And he was sort of, "Well, I come from the Middle East. We have air conditioning units in the street so you can stand by them because it's so hot. Um, so it's nice to experience rain," and he'd never experienced snow as well. He was here for a few years. He's back in the Middle East now because he was missing the hot weather, um, and the food. And yeah, it's these things that actually um, make countries very interesting. And also, I think having the variety of people in a country brings they bring their own foods, their own cultures, their own celebrations. So there are certain roads you go down, whether it's in Chester or in lots of other cities, where you can experience lots of different styles of food because of the populations. Um, and that's really important and really useful because actually I want to be able to experience some of these things. And yes, sometimes they are stereotyped or sort of adapted for a Western market. Or so, yes, I know full well that while I can go to, say, a Indian restaurant or a Chinese restaurant in the UK, the food that I will be served there is nothing like the food I will get in China or in India, because the food here has been westernized, and it's usually very high in salt as well. But I know that the food overseas in different countries is very different. But it gives people the opportunity to experience some of these things and some of the things they wouldn't ordinarily have experienced. So we start to then get this richness that cultural globalization brings us. But as part of the richness, we also have some of the challenges, and those link back to the demographic globalization. And actually, there's a place I travel past it on the train, where there's, as a result of cultural and demographic globalization, the group of individuals in that community have not integrated into the UK. So I go past it on the train when I'm coming in and out of London, and the signs are in Urdu, and there's cinemas in that community that play films for that particular community. So, and let's say it's very strange when you're driving through that area or you go past it on the train where you got the name of the station in Urdu, or the street names are in English and in Urdu as well. It's a very surreal sort of experience because that community hasn't integrated into society. And then people will come over from overseas, family members, and they continue to live in this community. And it's almost like a little eco community that is the language there is not English. They are not speaking English. Everything is done in their home language. And we see this in different parts of the UK. You go to East London, there is a very big Greek community. And actually, there's Greek radio stations in that part of East London. And it's so we do get these pockets, these cultural pockets within the UK where individuals do not integrate and communities do not integrate into the wider society, which brings about its own challenges.
Right. May I know do they speak English? I do know some like kind of like villages in a foreign country, they would so much reserve their own culture, especially those old people. So they would
Yeah,
kind of like, well, once you are in the village, speak our native language only.
yeah,
But it doesn't mean they only speak that language. Actually, they are like well bilingual or multilingual, but they just
yeah,
choose not to speak English. But when they go outside, when their children will go outside, they still communicate with, well, for example, British like in English.
yeah, absolutely. And we see this when I've been in other countries, in villages, they will have their own way of sort of speaking and doing things. But when they're in the towns, then they are able to sort of move between the two, if you like. That they are quite happy being in the towns and the cities, but then when they're back in the village, then they speak in a different way and do things in a different way. And that's, I say, that's a part of them maintaining their culture. But as we said previously, um, as the world gets more globalized, we almost want to hold on to some of these cultures and traditions and practices for fear that if we don't, we run the risk of actually losing some of these and that we just become almost too globalized. So we start to lose our identity as citizens within a particular country or a particular part of the country. And I think that that's something that people are very wary and cautious of. I'm gonna move on a couple of slides. Um, oh no, sure, do that one later. I don't actually want that. I don't know why that's popping up. Okay, let's see. Much later. Okay. One of the things, I don't know, let's say why that kept popping up. One of the things that is interesting is that as we become more culturally globalized, we we start to fall into this system almost almost conformity that or companies do. So the idea being in fast food is American fast food is a good example of this, where wherever you go, you will get the same experience. So you will get the same quality of food, whether that's good or bad. The fast food chains will look the same, and we will be almost sort of forced into this way of sort of thinking and doing things. And the example, which I don't know why this keeps popping up. I'm gonna have to. Um, Actually, let me stop sharing and then, sorry, not stop sharing. Let me come out of this and just show you on the slide. That's the slide. I don't know why that video kept popping up. So this was a real example. Is obviously a little bit older now, but it shows you the way in which cultural globalization we get forced into this way of thinking. So an armed robber goes into Burger King, which is a fast food chain across America and UK and other countries, and they want to rob the till. So the employees said that they couldn't open the till without ordering food. So the robber orders a portion of onion rings, so deep fried onions, and they were told that onion rings weren't available on the menu that morning, so they left with no money. So rather than saying, okay, I'll have a portion of fries or something else, we're almost forcing people down this route that, okay, wherever you go, you're not going to be able to have onion rings, so we can't open the till. And while this is a silly example, it does sort of highlight the point that actually, through globalization, we are almost making people follow certain steps. We're making everything the same. So luckily for Burger King, they weren't robbed. But if the robber had said, okay, can I have a portion of fries, they would have been robbed. So now they won't get robbed in any Burger Kings if they don't have onion rings with this set of robbers. It's a silly example, but actually it does have a serious meaning to it. The other thing related to cultural globalization, and you've all disappeared off my screen, is there's an activity which I want you to do, and I'll show you it. It's on Moodle. So let me just go to my Moodle. There. It's this drag and drop activity. So all you need to do is rearrange these pictures, and you can just drag them around to see which are the illnesses, or some of these aren't illnesses, which are the biggest killers. So what causes the most deaths in the Western countries? So you've got Alzheimer's, which is where you start to lose your memory, suicide, a stroke, heart disease, cancer, influenza, pneumonia, kidney disease, diabetes. So respiratory illnesses such as smoking, and just people being killed by accidents. So you just drag these around. Let's have a little go. I'm just trying to stick these in any order. You can just drag them around, okay. And then you can click on check, and it's, oh, I only got one right. The reason I want you to have a go at this is because actually, one of the things that is a result of cultural globalization is that a lot of the illnesses and things that cause us illness are actually man-made. They are a result of lifestyle, cultural lifestyle. So there is a particular stereotype, which was mentioned earlier about England being chips and fish pies. The American one is obviously fast food. And there's a cultural stereotype that a lot of Americans just eat fast food pizzas and burgers all the time. And that's a cultural stereotype. And the consequence of those diets or lack of exercise is an increase in certain illnesses. I was working in Greece a number of years ago, and they've changed it now, but only very, very recently. And in Greece, it was okay for teachers to smoke in class or in their offices. Now they've banned that now. Teachers have to now go outside and smoke. But you'd walk past these staff offices you'd open the door and then all the smoke would come out because they were sat smoking in their offices. Now, the result of that is obviously potentially an increase in things like lung cancer and respiratory problems. But that is a Western illness created by culture, by lifestyle. And what I want you to do with this task is to have a look at what you think some of those illnesses are. Because are we heading to a point, actually, let me just move on to that. Should we be producing toys which are more representative of populations? Now, the Barbie doll is very common for children in the West, and if you've never seen it, you can search for a picture of it. It's a very slim doll, almost sort of suggests that everybody should be very slim. But actually, should we have dolls and toys that are more representative of the societies that they are aimed at? So the picture on the right here is meant to be somebody in America. Should we have a doll which is more representative of the stereotypes of American children, where they've just got a burger in one hand? So should we talk about cultural globalization as quite a positive thing, but as with all of these, there are negative aspects. There are negative stereotypes, because I'm sure not all Americans wander around with a burger in their hand, just like all British don't wander around with an umbrella. Although, if I open the back door, you won't be able to see. But you'll be pleased to know, I'll turn my laptop around a bit so you can see. You probably can't see. It is actually raining here, just to conform to the British stereotype that all it does is rain. It is actually pouring rain, so if I do go out at all today, I will need the umbrella. But there are some positives about cultural globalization. There are some negatives. And that's really important to us to recognize. Right, what we're going to do, we're going to finish in a minute because some of you are yawning because I know you've had a busy day. And what time is it? It must be going on for 7 o'clock there, if not thereabouts.
Yes. 7.
There are going to be a couple of tasks for you to do. And what I'm going to do in a minute is send you an email. No, I'm going to send you a notification via Teams of the 3 things I want you to do. One of them will be around, let me just go back to the slide. Where is it? It was a few back. It's that slide. And I want you to comment. I'm going to enable the discussion forum in Teams, and I'll send you through the notification. I'll send you a link to it so you can actually find it on the Moodle page. Because I want you to each put some comments in about how you would define global culture and what it means to you. And then I want you to do that task 7 as well. Because next time what we're going to look at is around technological globalization, which isn't very long, Americanization, and then we are going to start to look at what different authors, different academic authors say globalization is. Okay. Continue to send me drafts of your assignments, because what I don't want to do is mark something or read something when you submit it and it's not right. I want everybody to pass first time. That's my wish. That's my hope, that I don't have to remark your work. So please send me a draft of your work. I've enjoyed reading the feedback on the ones I received. I spent yesterday afternoon reading through your draft assignments and outlines. Okay, so thank you for those who've done it. If you haven't, you don't have to, but if you just want to make sure you're on the right track to start with, then please send them through. And I will see you all very soon. I need to check my master timetable to see when I'm seeing you next, but I think it's actually, let me stop sharing. I'm seeing some of you for a seminar later. And then I see, when do I see you next? Oh, the last one of these is in a couple of weeks, but I see you before that, I think. So I will see you very soon. If you haven't signed up for the Slack channel as a form of sort of instant messaging, then please do. I know some of you have. There is something that came out. When did I post it? Was it Saturday or Sunday? I can't remember. But enjoy the rest of your evening, and I will see you very soon. Bye, everyone. Sorry, go on.
Yeah. So that's the end of the class for today.
For today, because I want you to spend a little bit of time doing these couple of activities, okay?
Okay, and you also mentioned that it is not, well, compulsory to send you the draft or the content.
It's not compulsory, but if you want to, then I will provide feedback on it, okay?
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
When?
Yes, Steve, please excuse me. You talked of this app to download. That's Slack.
Yeah.
Yeah, when I tried downloading it, they told me I'm supposed to register my courses. I don't understand.
You should just be able to click on the link.
Okay, because actually I'll try downloading it and they asked me to register the courses. And I also have this problem. There is this course, leading change in education, that we had a course already, but I didn't get the notification.
Okay,
I don't know.
Same here.
And it doesn't pop up on my timetable. Instead, it pops up on the timetable you shared, the edited one, but the original timetable in the system, I don't get it. I don't get the course from there. That's the reason why I had to miss the course. So I do not even know we had a session.
Yeah. I'm meeting with the timetable, and I'm looking at the master timetable now.
Okay.
And it starts at row 3 and goes through to row 52 of different entries. That has been sent to the timetabling. I'm meeting with them tomorrow morning to make sure everything is the correct slots have been timetabled. The thing I then need to do is make sure the correct students are allocated to the correct slots, because that's what they haven't been doing.
That's it, Steve.
So,
and concerning the seminar groups too, we don't have any seminar group. So it's really difficult, you know. We've not attended any seminar yet.
Right. The seminar groups have been scheduled, and those are being sent to timetabling later on today.
Okay, because actually I just find myself popping up in different groups I don't even know. So it's so confusing. At times I'm in group 7, group 3, group 2. I don't know what to say, when to say, and how to do.
And I don't know where these group numbers come from, because we've not allocated group numbers.
That also we don't understand. And they even say things there you don't understand. So it's like, who even added me to this group? I don't know.
And that's something we don't understand either, where these group numbers, because people keep emailing me saying, can I move from group 12 to group 6? Who's created this group 12? I don't know.
So Steve, I really wanted to know, so far, how many assignments do we have? Is it 2 or 3? Because I know of globalization of education and
leadership theory. Yeah, those are the two. Those are the two at the moment.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Thank you very much.
I can't hear you. You're very crackly. you're gonna have to send me an email because I can't hear you. I'm afraid.
Okay.
Colleagues, drop me an email because I need to just nip and send this stuff out to the rest of you, and I'll be online if you want to send a chat or give me a call, okay? But let me send this message out so that you can all start with your with the activities, and I'll see you soon.
All right.
Yeah. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, Steve.
Bye.
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 Thank you, sir. Goodbye.
Bye. Hello, Gwen.
Hi.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning, dear.
Yeah. So, if I get Steve correctly, it said the task.
Aisha, your voice is breaking, please.
I'm not the one speaking, Gwen. I don't know.
Who is speaking?
Tosin is the one speaking, actually.
Okay.
Yes, Tosin, please. I'm listening.
Anyway, before
She's
Tosin
gone.
starts, please go in. What's the app
Yeah.
Mr. Steve wants us to download?
He said we should download, is it Slack? SLACK. I think so. He sent it. You can go to, what was that email? Something Outlook. What's
Yeah,
that?
Outlook. Outlook.
Outlook and email. From there, you will get the link. You can download. Before you get to the link, you have to download the app first. From there, because why he brought this up is because of the security and our privacy, because our numbers could not be shared in a WhatsApp group. That's creating a WhatsApp group. So he decided that we should download that app in order to clear our doubts, discuss with each other, maybe students of the same course, and not creating a WhatsApp group. You can download it in your phone, but my phone is like the memory is really very small, so I'm not able to download. I think I don't know what to do. Maybe I'll use my tablet.
You better, Gwen. Me, I'm even there already, but I've not seen the messages. The messages they sent previously, I didn't see anyone.
It means messages are not yet sent, because actually I had to use I used my tablet, but I didn't get any message. We really need that group, you know.
I don't think he has sent a message or how to download.
Yeah, there is no message yet, because I tried linking up with my laptop. I didn't see any message.
Our parts, I don't know if we attend the same part. Do we? We have the same parts, right? Paula.
Yeah, our part is Steve.
Oh, okay. Mine is Paula. Tosin, yours?
Okay, so Tosin, on mute.
Tosin, I can't hear you. Tosin, we can't hear you.
You can type. Type. Send in the chat box.
So who is Paula?
It's like she's trying to type.
Okay.
Aisha, did you get it now? We have just 2 assignments for the moment.
one we took. Say that. That
Pardon?
That's
that's exactly what I'm saying. Maybe the people that attended that other course, they were not supposed to attend it, because I was wondering, where is it? But since it appeared on that other timetable, thank God the timetable will be at least revisited. I'm just so calm now,
I was
really tense.
You saw when we were laughing yesterday, I was feeling like, let me come there and come and drag you. Why are you laughing? Thank God. But this issue of registration, I'm sure it's not supposed to be like.
No, it's not supposed to be, because actually I told you we had all the courses. When you look at term 1, term 2, and term 3, all our courses are there. When you go to module, you also get the courses there. So when we were talking of registering the courses, I was like, but I have all the 7 courses. 3 for term 1, 3 for term 2, I think, and 1 for term 3.
So how many of us here now still like having the same?
I don't think Tosin and Endurance, I think they are studying.
My name is
their
Light.
course is
My
education
name is
in
Light.
society.
Call me Light.
Light.
Change it.
Okay.
Better.
Okay, darling.
I'm happy now.
Okay. Sorry.
Okay, Paula. Tosin is Paula.
Okay. My our
Tosin,
own
we're
is Steve.
together.
Aisha, yours is also Steve, right?
But Tosin, you know that we are supposed to be having about 3 assessments, if I'm not mistaken, Tosin. One from globalization. Do you offer child and development? Understanding child and development. Who does that? Go and do you?
No.
I know, Aisha.
So far, no.
Actually, Light, let me understand something. Are you the one that made a choice of your courses, or your courses just came automatically? I want to know something.
I registered my courses.
You registered your courses?
Yeah.
How did you register?
Yeah, because I'm seeing now why the thing came up as register your courses.
Wow, that's carrying me backward. That was I sent a message to my part to the e-vision and the Chester apps, and I just wrote extract modules after the 3, and then
okay, if I can understand better, if you want to add a course, that's when you register.
Yeah, so making everything I'm taking now for this whole year is 7. This term 3, 2, and second term will be 2, third term will be 2.
Okay, so 3, 2, 2.
Yeah.
So ours just came, I think ours just came automatically. Mine, let me not say us, I should be globalizing us. Mine came as term 1, 3, term 2, because I didn't register anything.
Oh, I see.
So it came 3, 3, 1.
Oh.
The one is third term, which is dissertation.
Yes.
You get it. So the first one I got for term 1, you have leading change in education, whether it's in schools, you have globalization of education, and you have leadership theory into practice. That's for term 1. Then for term 2, we have something politics, what, and professional something development, and I think one more. I didn't jot it down. I think one more. Then the last one, which is term 3 dissertation. So altogether, I have 7.
Yeah, everybody is meant to have 7.
Which means you just change your course, I think, if I may understand. So if I want to change, is it possible?
Yes, it is. Just meet your path. Sorry.
Okay, because I have to change, I think that politics something, and put sense education, whether a child of special need, something like that. Okay, thank you very much. Actually, if we could even get, anyway, let's just see how we'll download that Slick app. So it'll be better for us to be discussing there.
I don't know. I've not seen any message though, but I've done it. But you can actually invite someone through it,
Really? Then you invite me.
invite me to. Let's see.
Tosin, type. Your mic is not working.
My part also sent me a message not quite long when we were in class saying that they've added me to the MA Education in Society.
Okay.
So their class team.
To their class team.
Yeah.
I just pray they also add us because we need it for sure.
Yeah. So
I think I'll have to email Steve now.
Because I know I'm supposed to.
Education in society. We are educational leadership.
Yeah.
In society, we don't. It's not for. We don't do that.
No, I know. Yeah, but you can still meet your parts though, going.
Yeah, that's just what I have to do.
Yeah. Like me now, I just picked the courses I know I'll be good with because since I'm already in the field of education for a very long time. So.
Okay.
What are you putting? I want to remove the politics.
No, I don't want to do politics because I don't even know that one. I think I'll choose. So I'll choose it because I'll just have to change that politics. Yeah.
No, turn out to the front.
The child. I will check to know what I can replace it with. But I don't politics. I will just write to Steve to know if he will respond on time. Responding on time is the issue.
He'll respond. Just be consistent in your messages. Why you send? Because I think I sent all the emails I sent to him. He responded.
Yeah, you sent them to me.
Yeah.
Tosi, what is it? What did you eat? Did you swallow frog? This one
I hope there is no. We are not taping anything here, or they are not. Nothing is recorded. So you are saying somebody is eating frog like that. So.
I don't understand. I don't know. Oh, this thing is very low. Gwen, have you received the email that Steve sent?
I will check it from. There is no. Actually, we'll get it from the module. Is there?
Please, whosoever received it should enable to send it to me. I have to go right now.
Do you have a class now?
I don't get class, so I beg I define work, better paying work.
Remember, you get only 20 hours, so.
It's the safety. That's why I did better. Yeah, the English better. So see. So see, I stop mute.
I'm telling you.
Please, who has completed the first assignment?
Which one? Babe.
Which one? Leadership theory into practice. Are you done?
Leadership theory into practice.
Yeah.
That's not mine.
Oh, you didn't do that one?
No.
Okay.
For refugee. Sorry, no. What's it? So that course we had on Wednesday. What's his name?
Leading change.
No.
Aisha was telling you maybe that leading change in education was attended by a different course people, not us. Because I was wondering.
Date is written there.
Tosin. So, have you done your take home on how we got here? I understand the head shaking. So you guys, that means we're actually from different groups though, coming together to offer one course.
Tosin is studying education in society, right?
Yes, she's in my group, yeah.
Okay. We are educational leadership.
Yes, Mona lead us well. One I don't lead finish, we'll come teach you now. Mona, no worry.
Very, very important. No, but actually, if I'm studying educational leadership, I should study politics too, right? So
yeah, actually, if you really, but it depends. So it depends on your motive. For me, since you know why you are here first of all. So if you know if politics is something you can, but, somebody was telling me we are going to write an exam. Is that true?
That I don't know.
Because I know our assessment is our exams.
Exactly.
Light.
That's what I know.
I'll be slick.
Huh? Sorry,
can you go to sleep
and ask I've not gotten your I should do what?
Go and ask your part, because I want to know too. So you give me the feedback. I don't mind giving you my WhatsApp, you know, so you give me the feedback.
Okay, let me just even shut my part right now. But it's not true though. But let me shut my part right now.
Yeah, you just heard so.
Yeah. Who I even hear from self? I don't trust it first.
That's Aisha. Always giving me informations. Aisha.
What is the problem? You guys crucifying me for
you heard that's the way you were shouting. You made it. You said I was almost mad.
Oh, you want me to carry the burden alone? We have to share it, you know. This girl.
I was like, what is happening? My head is hard.
Imagine. I gave you the right information and we ask questions. I'm not even sure that I'm even cleared. I'm still thinking.
Don't be thinking our part cleared everything. I know that was hockey.
So he said by today we are going to receive email concerning.
Yeah, and the timetable as well. Updated timetable.
Oh, I press so.
Okay, so I've sent it to us, so I will wait to respond though.
Okay.
Yeah, so anyway, dear, I got to go on to go eat. So love you guys. So see.
Love you too. Bye.
Bye.
So see what's always happening to your volume. Aisha, can we go now?
I don't mind, but I will still call you. Be ready.
No issues. Dosi, see you. Bye.